The clock is counting. Not for minutes, but for humanity. One choice. 15 minutes. What would you do? Before watching the video, please hit the subscribe button and like the video. Mr. President, sir, you need to listen to me. A massive launch has been detected. We believe nuclear missiles will strike our country in approximately 15 minutes. I understand this is your first day, a day meant for ceremony, but the world has just changed. You are now the only person who can authorize our response, and you have less time than it takes to boil an egg to decide the fate of human history. The voice belongs to your national security advisor, her face pale but her eyes locked on yours. The initial shock gives way to a chilling clarity. The geopolitical landscape has been a tinderbox for weeks, a contested shipping lane, a downed drone, escalating cyber attacks that crippled a power grid. It was a crisis, but it was supposed to be manageable. Now, that crisis has metastasized. We believe the attack is a decapitation strike, she continues, leading you through the frantic corridors towards the Presidential Emergency Operations Center. They are trying to neutralize our command and control, our nuclear forces on the ground, and our leadership, you, in a single, overwhelming blow. They want to win this war before we can even fight it. You slam into the reinforced chair in the command bunker. A massive screen flickers to life, showing a web of arcing red lines crossing the globe. What we know, an Air Force general begins, his voice strained, is that 4 minutes ago, our space-based infrared system, satellites that watch the Earth for the intense heat bloom of a missile launch, detected over 100 ICBMs leaving enemy territory. They weren't from the known, hardened silos we've watched for 50 years. These came from mobile launchers, giant trucks that can hide in forests and fire from anywhere. They were hidden, waiting. This was planned. He points to the map. Their primary targets are predictable: the missile fields in Montana and North Dakota, our strategic bomber bases in Missouri and Louisiana, and the naval pens for our nuclear submarines in Washington and Georgia. But here's the reality, sir. Their secondary targets will be what they call economic infrastructure, our power plants, our ports, our financial centers. These are just code words for our biggest cities. Millions of civilians are in the crosshairs, and they don't even know it yet. An aide hands you a tablet. Emergency broadcasts are going out, but what can we tell them? Shelter in place? In a city center, that's a death sentence. We can't evacuate millions in minutes. The screen shifts to a technical display. Let me explain why we can't just shoot these down, the general says, his voice grim. An intercontinental ballistic missile doesn't fly like a plane. It launches into space, reaching an altitude of over 1,000 kilometers. At the peak of its arc, it's traveling at nearly 24,000 kilometers per hour. Then, it releases its payload, a bus, carrying up to 10 individual nuclear warheads. Each of these multiple independent re-entry vehicles, or MIRVs, can be aimed at a different target. Alongside them, it releases hundreds of decoys, cheap, inflatable mylar balloons shaped like warheads, all coded to look identical on radar. To our defenses on the ground, it's like trying to find 10 specific grains of sand in a hurricane. Our ground-based mid-course defense interceptors are launching now, but they are rocketing towards a cloud of over 4,000 potential targets. Statistically, even in perfect conditions, we might hit a few dozen. There is no shield. The sword is coming. Your advisor steps forward again. You have 3 options, sir. The triad. First, the land-based missiles. We have 400 Minuteman III missiles in hardened silos. If you give the order now, they can launch before they're destroyed. It's a use them or lose them scenario. Second, the air. We have B-2 and B-52 bombers on high alert. With your command, they can be wheels up in 2 minutes, flying towards their pre-assigned targets, becoming an unstoppable retaliatory force. Third, the sea. This is our guarantee. At this very moment, at least 4 Ohio-class submarines are patrolling the depths of the world's oceans, each carrying enough firepower to destroy a continent. They are silent, they are undetectable, and they are our ultimate vengeance. If we lose everything on land, they will ensure the enemy does not survive. We can use them to hunt down their remaining reserves, their untouched silos, to prevent a second wave. But you must decide. Do we absorb this first strike and retaliate with only our survivors? Or do we launch everything we have right now, an all-out countersalvo, knowing it will guarantee the end of the world as we know it? A new alert flashes on the screen. Sir, radar confirmation. The enemy MIRVs have separated from their booster rockets. Terminal phase has begun. They're re-entering the atmosphere. The general's voice drops. And we are detecting high-altitude detonations. They've sacrificed a few warheads, exploding them in space to create an electromagnetic pulse. It's a tactic to blind us, to create atmospheric interference that confuses our interceptors in the final, crucial seconds. They thought of everything. He looks at you, the weight of the moment pressing down. Our silo launch sequence, from your command to the missiles clearing the blast doors, takes 5 minutes. The first impacts are in 9 minutes. The window to launch our land-based missiles is closing in the next 240 seconds. Your advisor opens a small, rugged briefcase, the nuclear football. Inside is a verification system. Sir, the war plan is set. The targets are programmed. All it requires is your authorization. If we don't act, you condemn our nation to annihilation without a response. But if you do, you will be personally responsible for the deaths of tens of millions of people. Their casualties will mirror our own. The combined nuclear fallout will then blot out the sun, plunging the Earth into a nuclear winter. Global agriculture will collapse. It won't just be the end of our nations, it could be the end of our species. That may happen anyway, even if we do nothing. There are no good choices here, Mr. President. Only choices. The clock on the wall is a relentless tyrant. Your hand trembles as you look at the launch mechanism. This isn't a war of armies, but of physics and timetables, set in motion by a single decision. You are faced with the terrible logic of deterrence. The only way to prevent your own destruction is to promise a destruction even greater in return. And now, you have to make good on that promise. Sir, the general pleads, his voice cracking, we need the codes. We need your decision. Now, does the president push the button? In this story, the answer doesn't matter. What matters is that this room, this choice, and this countdown have been real. This is the impossible paradox of nuclear deterrence. A scenario where the only winning move is not to play, yet the game is always active. The story you just witnessed is fiction, but the mechanism is terrifyingly real. In a moment of crisis, blurred by the fog of war and unreliable data, a single human being is given the authority to end civilization based on information that could be flawed. They are asked to make a decision with the weight of billions of lives in a time frame shorter than a lunch break. And humanity has stumbled to this precipice of self-destruction more times than we are comfortable admitting. In 1983, the Soviet Union's early warning satellite system reported 5 inbound American missiles. The protocol was clear: retaliate immediately. But the officer on duty, Stanislav Petrov, had a gut feeling that something was wrong. A real first strike, he reasoned, would involve hundreds of missiles, not just 5. He disobeyed protocol and reported it as a system malfunction, an act that may have single-handedly saved the world. It was later discovered that sunlight glinting off high-altitude clouds had fooled the satellites. During the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, a Soviet submarine, cut off from communication with Moscow and harassed by US forces, prepared to launch a nuclear torpedo. The launch required the unanimous consent of 3 senior officers. 2 of them said yes, believing war had already begun. The third, Vasily Arkhipov, refused, calming the situation and pulling the world back from the brink. Today, the world's nuclear arsenal is smaller than it was at the height of the Cold War, down from over 70,000 warheads to around 12,500. But the danger has not vanished. It has simply evolved. New technologies like hypersonic missiles shorten decision times from minutes to seconds, increasing the risk of miscalculation. The framework of deterrence, once a tense but stable 2-player game, is now complicated by the rise of multiple nuclear powers. Any safeguard, no matter how carefully designed, can fail. Any human, no matter how well-intentioned, can make a mistake. Simply accepting that these weapons must exist may mean that their use is, one day, inevitable. But the future is not set. progress is possible. The treaties that have already reduced global arsenals are proof that nations can choose a different path. The power to influence that path doesn't just lie in the hands of presidents and generals. It begins with awareness, with understanding the stakes of this terrifying reality. It begins with demanding a world where no single person is ever again forced to make a decision in the final 15 minutes.